Well, a warm welcome to today's talk, Friday the 19th of August. Now, the UK vaccination authorities have just approved the COVID vaccine from Moderna with the bivalent vaccine. So it's got two components to it. One part is the original strain, the original 2020 strain, but the other component of the vaccine is designed to be active against BA1 Omicron, which of course we don't have anymore. And the country has decided to take on this vaccination campaign for the autumn, the fall of 2022. As far as I can see, based on a sample size of 437, which I would have thought is fairly small, but it's more nuanced than that. So if you want to know the details, then we'll take a look at that. Now, this initial data comes from this, what we don't like on this channel, science by press release. So this has just come from Moderna here, and the details are there, but they are fairly scant. So let's dive into those straight away. Omicron-containing bivalent COVID booster vaccine, and this is what they're calling it here, the 1273, which was the original one, .214. As we said, the original was the mRNA 1273 vaccine. So that's what they're doing. So now they're claiming superior neutralizing antibody response in baseline seronegative participants. Now, this confused me a little bit because I'm not sure where they would get seronegative participants from. Because the data from the Office for National Statistics shows that the seropositivity in the UK, for example, is about 97% and has been over 99% in some groups in some times. So interesting, but they seem to use seronegative. These were people that would presumably have been naive to the virus. But quite where they got those from will be interesting when we read the final paper. They said there's increased neutralizing genomic mean titers. That's the amount of antibody basically in the plasma against Omicron, approximately 8-fold above baseline level. So it looks like they took people without any antibodies here and then found the antibodies were increased 8 times above the levels of antibodies that they had, which is baseline level. Now, if you're now confused, so am I, because they took seronegative people, this seems to be saying, and then they found an 8-fold increase in antibodies against the baseline level of antibodies. But that's a direct quote from their site. So I'm sure this will all be clarified when we get the final peer-reviewed paper on this study. At least we would hope so. So they're giving a 50 microgram booster dose. They found it was well tolerated in 437. So that's 437 people that have done this study on. Well tolerated in 437 people. You might think that's not a big enough sample size to get good safety data on, and I would agree, but that's what they've done. The safety reactogenicity, the likelihood of having abnormal reactions, is basically similar to that of the original one, is what they're saying. Now, on this press release, now I've only read it 4 or 5 times, so I might have missed it, but I couldn't see any mention to BA1, which this vaccine was designed against. So whether they didn't have space for that or whatever, I'm not really sure, but I didn't see that there. But this is against the BA1 as well as the original one. So how much BA1 do we have at the moment? Well, the technical briefing for the UK is way out of date. It's technical briefing 44. I think it's from the 22nd of July or June or something. Anyway, it's out of date. But this was the figures from then. SARS coronavirus 2, variant of concern and variants under investigation in England. BA2, 3.4, BA4, 17.2%, BA5, 78, and others 0.7. So the only one that the BA1 could possibly come into there is the others. And let's take some data from the United States. Now here we have the nowcast from the States, which I haven't got at the moment, but we'll look at the figures. The nowcasting from the States is here. We've shown the diagram a few times on this channel, but we've got the figures. So the United States currently, BA5, 88.8%, BA4, Well, the two BA4s, 10.4% between them. BA2 12.1, 0.8%, BA2 0%, and BA1 0%. And we would assume it's pretty similar in the United Kingdom. Now, this isn't surprising because it takes quite a few months to develop the vaccine, and in those few months, the nature of the variants causing disease has changed completely. Of course, we're now on BA4, BA5 primarily, as we've seen. So a bit out of date. So they're basically going to be depending on what we call cross-reactivity, which does appear to be there. Now, just to put this into some safety context, epidemiology of myocarditis and pericarditis following mRNA vaccination in Ontario, Canada. That's the link there. It's published in Journal of the American Medical Association. So that is there for your perusal. Now, this was a population-based cohort study, and they found 297 individuals in Canada who had developed pericarditis or myocarditis following vaccination. So 297 people with this complication, with myocarditis or pericarditis following vaccination. Fairly high number, 297. And this is interesting. They found higher rates of myocarditis and pericarditis associated with the recipients of the Moderna vaccine compared to the Pfizer vaccine. So we know that there's, we looked at the Thai study recently and we found what I consider to be high levels of cardiac complications after Pfizer. Well, with Moderna, the Canadian data shows it's even more likely to occur. So again, adding to the intrigue really as to why the UK government has picked this particular vaccine, because it's got higher, or is likely, based on the Canadian data. And the Canadian data is based on the original Moderna, but it's probably going to be more cardiac complications compared to the Pfizer, particularly amongst male individuals and young men, 18 to 24. And the Thai data was also amongst adolescent males. The direct quote from this paper, the results suggest that there may be a product-specific difference in rates of myocarditis or pericarditis after receiving the mRNA vaccine. Yet the UK government has picked the one with the higher risk of pericarditis stroke myocarditis. So interesting. Now let's look at this information from, that was the variant, so that's the reference for the variants that I've included. That was the reference for that paper that we've just included. Again, all in the reference section of the video. This is the information about the first bivalent vaccine in the UK, first to adopt. And I'm expecting the US to be adopting it pretty soon as well. It's just that the UK's jumped in fairly quickly. This is from the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Authority, first bivalent vaccine. Moderna bivalent approved for adult boosters by the HMRA. It's the Spike Vax, that's the original Moderna, but it's combined with an Omicron one. 25 micrograms of the original, 25 micrograms of the Omicron, so it's half and half. Again, of course, equaling the total 50 that we mentioned. It's micrograms, mcg, we normally write that. This is written actually as, they've written as micrograms, that's good. Always best to write it out in full, then you don't get confused. Omicron BA1 and the original 20 strain. Now that's where I got this information from. Strange that this information wasn't supplied by Moderna themselves, at least on their press release. But we did get it from the UK data, BA1 there. So good that we've got this openness on the variants concerned from the UK government. Was also found to generate a good immune response against BA4 and BA5 according to the UK authorities, although we don't have the data for that yet. We just have to take their word for it. But good, of course, isn't that specific. Although there is some information on the press release about numbers. Anyway, let's go on to safety monitoring. Side effects observed were the same as those seen in the original Moderna dose, but I think that's only based on 437, so not a very good safety sample really. And were typically typically mild and self-resolving. They don't mention the deaths that have occurred from vaccinations. No serious safety concerns were identified. In a sample of 437, not too surprising. Professor Wu's chair of the Commission on Human Medicines, direct quote, "The virus for SARS coronavirus 2 is continually evolving to evade the immunity provided by the vaccines," correct. This novel bivalent vaccine represents the next step in the development of vaccines to combat the virus, with its ability to lead to a broader immune response than the original vaccine. True, but the BA1 is no longer with us. So it's interesting. Now let's look at global deaths now. That's this figure here. Sorry about the adverts. They're not mine. They're the websites. I never put adverts in the body of the video. 6.5 million deaths basically are being reported there. That's the figure. That's from World Meter. And the evidence cited by the HMRA that they seem keen for us to look at actually comes from this paper here when you trace back the original source. And it looks like a fairly good paper published in the Lancet, obviously based on quite a few assumptions and incomplete data, but they do make account for that. So I'm not knocking this paper at all. It's interesting. So that's the number of deaths officially recognised in the pandemic from SARS coronavirus 2. Now, this is their evidence here from the Lancet, based on official reports of COVID-19 deaths, which we know are underestimate. We estimated that the vaccines prevented 14.4 million deaths from COVID-19 in 185 countries. Now, we know that the real number of deaths is more than this. So actually, it will have saved more lives than that. And of course, the researchers are aware of this. Between 8th of December 2020 and 8th of December 2021, 19.8 million lives were saved if they use excess deaths as an estimate, and the excess deaths is the better, more accurate estimate, we believe, with high numbers of deaths. So getting on for 20 million people really saved by the vaccines. And if we look at the shape of the alpha wave in terms of deaths and hospitalisations in the UK, really very high. And then when the Delta came in, the death rates were much, much lower. And we believe that was largely due to the vaccinations. But that was then, this is now. As we've said many times, the risk-benefit analysis has changed. So going on to the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation updated statement about this, let's look at some of the key points from that. For autumn 2022, now this is their advice, and it does seem to make a bit more sense. Through a combination of vaccine-induced immunity and natural immunity, so good to see that they're admitting there's natural immunity now, or agreeing there's natural immunity. Large proportions of the UK population have developed at least partial immunity. UK is transitioning from a period of pandemic emergency to emergency response to pandemic recovery. So we're now going into a period of pandemic recovery. The focus will be increasingly on protecting those in society who continue to be more at risk, which makes more sense. And they're having a planned and targeted vaccination programme is considered more appropriate than a reactive vaccine strategy. So it looks here to me like they are maybe backpedaling's too strong a word, but the universality of the advice is no longer there, and they're being much more specific in their advice, which I'm pleased to see. And they've managed to do that without really considering the possibility that they were right or wrong before. But okay, we're moving forward. So for the Autumn 22 booster campaign programme, the primary objective is to augment immunity in those at highest risk. Good. So we know, for example, that 20-year-old men aren't at very high risk typically, so I don't think I would want to boost to them myself. Thereby optimising protection against severe COVID-19, specifically hospitalisations and deaths over the winter of 2022 and 2023. Now, at the moment, we are primarily BA5 with a bit of BA4. This is true in the United States. When we get the new data from the UK, I suspect we'll see well over 90% of BA5. And the good news is we don't seem to have a variant which is kind of taking over from BA5. So this gives rise to some guarded optimism that BA5 may be the last major wave. Much too early to say, but interesting. So as people get BA5, they develop immunity to BA5. So far, there doesn't seem to be another variant that's more able to spread than BA5, whether it's due to increased transmissibility or immune escape. So there is significant hope there. But anyway, that's slightly off topic. JVCI advises boosters for residents in care homes for older adults, staff working in care home settings for older adults. Now, for the staff here, the idea that the vaccine is going to prevent spread, the evidence for that is not that high because we had a very highly vaccinated population in the UK. And yet we've had this massive wave of Omicron BA4 and BA5. So in terms of large-scale populations, the idea that we vaccinate to protect others, I'm not sure the evidence for that is as strong as it was, to put it mildly. But nevertheless, that's the guidelines. Frontline healthcare workers and social care workers, again, would have the same kind of ambiguity, especially as these people have been exposed now on multiple occasions and have presumably developed mucosal compartment immunity. But this is their recommendations. All adults over 50 years and over, persons aged 5 to 49 in critical risk groups. So we see them much more targeted here, aren't they? Persons 5 to 49 who are household contacts of people with immunosuppression, and persons aged 16 to 49 who are carers. Again, the evidence that it's going to prevent onward transmission, I'm not sure is as strong as it was. Now, for me personally, this is my letter. So I've been sent a letter to go for a booster. I think the reason I've got on this list is that I've probably told you before, it's no great confidence. I've started on meds for blood pressure. I'm working on lifestyle factors so I can get off them, but I'm still working on that. So I'm on these blood pressure meds, so that probably puts me at slightly higher risk. But then again, the blood pressure is well controlled, so hopefully not. Anyway, of course, I can't advise you what to do, but I have no plans to have a booster this autumn for COVID. That's entirely my personal thinking, not advice for you in any way, shape or form. Now, let's see this opportunity now with starting this new campaign, given that it's going to happen. Time to collect prospective data. So this is an ideal opportunity to collect data prospectively rather than the retrospective data that we've been getting, because the first prospective study in adolescents that we looked at in Thailand just a few days ago, quite disgraceful really that we have to take the first prospective study from Thailand in this age group for this Pfizer vaccine. We looked at this a few days ago, so I'm not going to go over it again, but cardiovascular events were found in 29.24% of the 13 to 18-year-olds involved. Most common effects were tachycardia, shortness of breath, palpitations, chest pain, hypertension, abnormal ECG findings, and 7 participants, all male, had at least one biomarker, whether it was troponins or whether it was creatine kinase. Creatine kinase being a biomarker for myocyte damage, as indeed is troponin. So there we go. That's just a very brief run through of what the UK are planning to do. Now, I did check this morning. I couldn't see that the US has followed suit yet, but I expect they will pretty soon. But we looked at some pros and cons there, but still a little bit surprised that the UK government jumped in so quickly, as far as I can see, based on a sample size of 437. My concern, or one of my concerns, is that we're having 2 slightly different types of spike protein being produced at the same time by the RNA that gets into our cells, how is that going to interact, and will that influence the vaccine safety, and will we need numbers much greater than 437 to completely clarify the answer to that question? That's what's happening. So we're now a bit more up to date, and thank you for watching.